You can't, like, in the UN meetings, you can't jump into the most serious problem. I'm sure they have like some kind of easy work they all agree to. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start at the bottom then. So one goes, one stays. Code Geass or Made in Abyss?
Which one you keeping? Which one you keeping? And, which one you throwing away?
This is so hard because I love both these shows.
Yeah.
For totally different reasons. I'm... Oh,
what are you thinking, Connor?
Listen, I like Made in Abyss. I think the story is, dare I say, better. But it does make you a little uncomfortable when you're watching Made in Abyss.
Yeah, it makes you uncomfortable on a lot of different levels. It's just like a really uncomfortable show to watch in general because of some of the shit that happens in the show and some of the things that are portrayed in the show. Code Geass is a little bit more of a traditional, let's say, anime, traditional story. It's
one of the GOATs, some might say.
I would agree with that. It is one of the
you stand terrorism, guys? You stand terrorism?
Think terrorism is base. That's an out of context. When done right, obviously.
You know what's even better? Terrorism with your friends.
It's about even the friends based. We made along the way.
Listen, he's only a terrorist because the government calls him a terrorist.
Exactly.
But really, he's what some might say, a freedom fighter.
Yeah. The resistance.
Terrorism is just...
I'm sure they called... let's find a real
Finish the sentence.
Finish
the sentence, Connor.
I'm sure they called the Welsh terrorists back in the 1200s. All right? Okay? It's not always so cut and dry about who's a terrorist. Okay?
You know, it's always a save when you use your own race.
Okay, really hard to think of some clean cut ones.
Let me just go through history and see if there are some. No.
Which one will get me in the least amount of trouble?
Yeah, because if they were terrorists, then we wouldn't be calling them terrorists because they wouldn't be on the right side of history, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Normally the terrorists,
and normally the winners get to write history. Okay.
For me personally, I'm leaning more towards Made in Abyss. I think because like Code Geass, yes, is an absolute classic, amazing story, great freaking ending, and you think that would have an advantage over Made in Abyss, which hasn't finished yet. But I'm thinking about my viewing experience with both of these, and I feel there was more of an emotional impact for me with a lot of the scenes in Made in Abyss compared to Code Geass. I think for me it's more memorable as a show, and I think it's more interesting as a show as well. Just in the fact that, you go into Made in Abyss and you're like, oh, this is going to be some like cutesy show about discovering a fucking massive hole in the ground. And then you realize like, no, it is going to go in the complete opposite direction. It's going to be, as Gaunt said, some of the most like really uncomfortable scenes. And not just in the way that, we're all thinking, but in the other actual like dark themes as well.
But that's what makes Made in Abyss so frustrating as a show for me, because it was so cool and it was so, I guess, ingenious in some of its ideas. Especially, I like how obviously it's kind of a lot of the times when people talk about the show, they're like, oh, it's the reason why I guess it's kids experiencing this stuff is because that's how you can kind of frame it in such a like horrific way.
Yeah.
By showing the naivete of children going through this like really fucked up world.
Yeah. There are some scenes that don't need to be there.
And then then there's just like one or two scenes where you're like, oh man, you're like, maybe the reason it's about kids is not because it's naivete, and that's just enough to kind of poison the well a little bit in your head where you're like, why, dude? Why?
No, I definitely agree with
like
that.
Some scenes, especially in the manga. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
You're like, Christ, man.
Yeah, the manga, people watching the anime will like looked at some scenes and they're like, come on, man, that's too much. And then you went and read the manga and you're like, okay, man, I know what you're trying to do.
It's a shame because it really encapsulates, especially season 2. Season 2 is so weird, but like so fucking interesting at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just so sad how I felt like a lot of this has been polluted for myself, my own enjoyment, because I guess I care about that and I care that that's in there, which I understand that some people don't, and they can easily look past that, and I applaud them. And I think I still really like the show a lot, which I don't know what this is about me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I completely agree with your points. And to me, it's more about, sometimes you see things in fiction that on a morality level and on a comfortableness level, you don't necessarily agree with, or, especially, I can think of another show on this list that's, has challenged me in that way, and I'm sure people.
I'm looking right at it.
Being an anime fan fucking sucks. Why am I going to talk about this shit? Why do I have to dissect this? You know what I mean? Why can't I just? Call of Duty. I never had to think about this. All right, never had to think about this.
Yeah, but there are some moments in fiction where you're like, I don't really fuck with that side of the show.
Yeah,
but this piece of fiction, this story does this part so amazingly well that for me personally, I am very happy and very comfortable focusing on the parts that I really do enjoy, and I think that it does fantastically and amazingly, and still acknowledging the parts that make me uncomfortable, but acknowledging that, but also being like, okay, I acknowledge this part, this aspect of the story exists, but this part is the part that I think is really special, and I connect with this part.
No, 100%.
And
It's always tough having an argument about this. Well, not an argument, but debate about this stuff, because people get so fucking charged about it online.
Yeah.
When you get that first A380 on Call of Duty, that's how it feels to watch Code Geass, though. When you get that first big kill streak and you start gunning people down, that's how it feels to watch Code Geass.
Wait, why?
It is like Code Geass is the male fantasy anime. It is literally male engineered to be like, oh yeah. You know what I mean? It just ticks all the boxes in your brain for a guy that like
the male fantasy of committing casual terrorism.
He did everything Kirito couldn't.
Sure, that is true.
He did everything Eren couldn't as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's the perfect Giga Chat.
Yeah,
But,
with the perfect
And he was a
jawline.
terrorist.
Do you think that Code Geass coming out today would hit the modern audience as hard as it did back then? Because you look back, I look back to the ending of Code Geass versus the ending of Attack on Titan, which both have a very similar setup, and both, not knowing it, if you hadn't read any of the endings, they could have ended in very, very similar fashions, right? But I feel like they both took different directions with that ending. Code Geass was much more of the, fallen hero kind of route.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the time, that felt like fucking awesome, Whereas to me, Attack on Titan felt more realistic, and it didn't hit audiences the same way because it wasn't as clean cut. But to me, that felt like a much more if this series of events were to actually happen in the world, how would we actually feel about the main character of the story?
That's because it's a reflection of the time.
Yeah.
I think, when did Code Geass come out? 15 years ago?
2007.
Okay, so
It
nearly 20
started
years
at
ago,
7 or 8.
I think it's safe to say, as a civilization, we were slightly more optimistic 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly, right? We were way more optimistic.
And I think
Without a
Attack on
doubt.
Titan is just a reflection of the time we're in.
Yeah.
I'm trying to cut out ums. Sorry. So slap me whenever I okay?
Okay.
You have permission to slap me
Okay,
from now
cool.
on.
So awesome. Okay, so one has to go, one has to stay. I am sticking to my gun and going with Made in Abyss.
Yeah, here's the thing about Code Geass. I have to pick one of these, which is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But if you are going to put them in a boxing ring against each other, are we just going to ignore 80% of Code Geass R2 that we have forgotten?
What are you on about? Natalie was the best.
You remember Rolo? Remember? Drum Rolo.
I remember Rolo, and that's why I was silent there for a moment, because I was trying to think of a defense for Rolo.
I didn't even remember Rolo.
The only benefit of Rolo existing was that he had the same name as the chocolate that we had in the UK.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that was about when my connection with him was good. I admit, yes, Code Geass Season 2 was bad, and they kind of floundered up until the point where they were like, okay, we're finally going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I do think that them killing Lelouch was probably listen, it's been 20 years. I can spoil that.
Yeah.
Them killing Lelouch off was probably the worst financial decision that the Code Geass franchise has ever had, because every time they try to bring him back, everyone's like, nah.
Nah.
Well, then
not in my head.
They're making a new Code Geass now. It's coming
Again
out
with like what, like Lelouch reincarnated?
No, it's like a new characters and just apparently a new storyline.
I would have loved to have seen Lelouch in Made in Abyss. Just see him really sort with some good old fashioned colonialism.
What the?
Start really sorting out those depths. All right, get some infrastructure laid down. Get some train tracks. You know, get these weird fucking blob things.
Lelouch commands you to not feel pain.
that scene where they have to exterminate the thing.
Yeah.
Like, just die.
Lelouch commands you to just die.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of things.
I
in
like Code
Geass
Geass more. I think.
And there's one more thing as well about Code Geass that I feel like we looked over a lot in Code Geass when we were kids, just because it was like cool. But I look back at even like season 1, the big turning point where the story had ended. They had achieved world peace. And then the Lelouch was like, hypothetically speaking, let's just say we've achieved world peace. The story is over. But hypothetically speaking, if I just tell you to kill everyone, kill all the Japanese, that would be a funny haha joke, right? Kick W.
Okay, I will agree with you that is probably.
I'm joking.
Wait! I said I'm joking.
It is probably the single worst way I've ever seen a plot move forward. And in hindsight, you can slap me by the way I said it. It is probably the worst way I've ever seen a story move forward.
Yeah.
I still think I would vote Code Geass.
Okay.
But
I mean, that's fine. You go with your gut feeling.
Go with your gut. Go with your
Keep
gut.
one.
I made my vote. All right.
Yeah.
I as well. I love Kevin, but man, that one song is. It was like burned in my head. It's burned in my head. Sorry, Kevin. One simple rhyme, one simple melody.
Me when I'm colonizing.
Mudan knows what I'm talking about. Play it, Mudan. Play it a little bit. Everyone knows that. It's burned in your head.
Yeah, that's true.
It's when like the main character is about to pull some grade A bullshit. That's the song that plays in your head.
I know exactly, but I'm going with Made in Abyss.
Made in Abyss goes forward.
Made in Abyss is it for me.
All right.